All right, so we're here with Benny and Ben McClean. And so tell us a little bit about your family history and how you guys got into the citrus industry.
My granddad was in Bartow, Florida, and was a citrus grower, a timberman, and a vegetable farmer. And then my dad was born in Bartow, and he was raised growing citrus and vegetables. And then I was born in Bartow, and my dad and the rest of my family moved to Clearmont in 1954.
What prompted the move?
Well, my mom had passed away at 39 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So my dad remarried and we moved to Clearmont, and he was production manager for a big citrus operation up there.
Which operation was that?
Well, it was called Polo Groves. That had citrus in Polk County, Orange County, Lake County, and Osceola County.
That's where the polo comes from?
That's where the polo, and right now today, if you go up on Highway 27, when you cross into Lake County, you'll see Polo Park. It's all developed.
And that's what that was?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Polk County, Orange County, Lake County, and Osceola County.
Was there a Marco Polo labeled brand, or am I just imagining that? Okay.
Yeah.
And where did your granddaddy come from originally?
Originally, he came from North Carolina.
Okay.
Correct, Bill?
Right. Angus Benjamin came out of North Carolina and then by way of Georgia and came into Florida. Family history tells us in 1880, and he was born in 1862, and he came with several other brothers and settled there around Bartow. And he, like Dad said, he was a large landowner over time, and then he had 4 children. He actually had 5. One died at birth. And my granddad, Ben McClean Sr., was the youngest of them, and he was born in 1919.
Do you know what prompted the move from into Florida? And
I think
especially
it was
Bartow.
Yeah, I think it was just like so many people that came out of Georgia and the Carolinas during that time. It was post-Civil War, and they were coming down to do just land development. He was in timber. He obviously did a lot of turpentine farming, as my granddad called it, early on.
Right.
And a lot of people came from those areas during the period of Reconstruction and just pushed down into Florida with a lot of cheap land and pine trees everywhere.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So then when they got to Bartow, how did they get into the citrus side of things?
You know, that's a good question. I think that was just a typical option.
Okay.
You know, if you go back at that time frame, you see the citrus industry was just starting to grow.
Okay.
And it really had a big market that was being developed, and a lot of people that owned land got into the citrus business back in that time frame.
And I think it was common to clear the land first of the pine.
Right.
Or
Cut the pines.
cut the pines, make money off of the timber or the turpentine. Of course, some of the hardwoods as well too, like oaks. And then plant back and citrus. Some did tomatoes. Some up in Lake County did cucurbits.
Cucurbits? What are cucurbits?
Oh, like your melons and pickles and squash and things like that.
Okay.
That was common up in Lake County. And some people cleared the land and stayed in cattle as well too. And so I think his granddaddy, my great granddaddy, as they called him AB, I think that's AB had his hand in all of those.
Right.
Truck farming, cattle, and citrus. That was the things after the land was cleared. At one time, allegedly, he owned almost 50,000 acres of land.
Around Polk County.
Around
yeah.
Polk County.
Yeah. No, that was way back,
Yeah, and just farm it for that. But then my granddad, so being born in 1919, he went to the old Summerlin Institute there in Bartow, graduated, and then he went to University of Florida.
Okay.
Got a degree in agronomy and came out. He graduated fairly early, and in 1940 he started his career not only as a citrus consultant, but he did some caretaking and growing, and so that's what he did through the 40s. My dad obviously was born in 42. He was one of 3. And
all boys?
No.
You're
he was the only boy. He was the middle child. Yep.
And
And so Granddaddy also helped start the citrus program at Florida Southern.
You did? Or your,
No,
your
my
dad?
dad.
Your dad
Yep.
did?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize
1951,
that.
I think.
Somewhere in there. He was hired as one of the
1951.
initial professors and all, and he was honored by Dr. Mack and others
Right.
years ago. And,
He set it up and taught there for a year,
I never knew that.
and then turned it over to.
Yeah, I think he-
we called him Dr. Mack.
Yeah, I think he was the one who got Dr. Mack hired or
Right.
said, you
And
know,
then after that, I think Milton Lyle came in and helped out too.
okay, I didn't. But so then, as my grandfather's first wife, his mom passed away, unfortunately, of having her gallbladder removed, and she passed away tragically. My granddad relocated the family back up to Clermont.
Okay.
And so that's how we had our roots. And then my granddad had 5 more kids, Mark and Mary and Scott and John and Jeff McClean, they're my uncles. But since they were just a few years older than me, everybody in Clermont thought we were brothers and sisters more than they realized those were my aunts and uncles. But that led to my dad and my granddad having a long career there in Central Florida, consulting and growing and owning and operating their own groves, all the way up until the 1983 freeze of December, and then the January 85 freeze. That pretty much wiped out all of the family's personal groves. And during that time, that caused my granddad to also relocate down to the Sebring Lake Placid area,
Okay.
where from basically about 1982 to when he passed in 2003, he spent most of his time growing in the Highlands County and LaBelle area.
Okay, I was just had an interview with Ray and didn't realize that you had family down there.
Yep. Yeah, my granddad lived down there as well as several of my uncles. All moved down there in the 80s.
Okay.
But my dad and my brother Matt, who's the Uncle Matt of
Oh,
Uncle
right,
Matt's
right.
Organic, we're still up in Clermont, so got the north half and the south half, you know, we all get along.
That's good.
Oh yeah. But you'd asked earlier, you know, about the history of Uncle Matt's Organic. So in all those years of my grandfather's experience, he knew, like he said, he knew a lot about what it was like to farm in Polk County in the 1930s and the 1940s. And as he said, a lot of people just farmed organic. Back then, it just wasn't called that. And they used natural materials like Peruvian bat guano for fertilizer. They grew leguminous cover crops like hairy indigo. And they sprayed with liquid lime sulfur and put out just, you know, Chilean nitrate or sulfate of potash mined from the ground. Well, all of those are tools that are approvable for use in organic citriculture as well. So Uncle Matt's, my grandfather, as we called him, Pappy, was actually instrumental in getting that started, in that he encouraged us that were like, well, yeah, I think we used to do it. Heck, yeah, sure, it can be done. You know, and so we used to talk a lot about that. And my brother had graduated from University of Florida in, I think, 94, 95, and came out and was a juice broker for a couple years, but said he wanted to start his own label someday.
Who was he a juice broker for?
He brokered around for, well, he worked with the Ropers and others. He would just, you know, buy juice. He had some customers over in the Middle East and over in Germany as well,
Really?
too. Yep. And he noticed that one of the German buyers kept asking for, back then it was called biologic, which became organic.
Organic, okay.
And so that let Matt to thinking, hey, we could do this. And he began by purchasing the organic juice that was grown by the Chapmans and the Ropers then, and brokering and reselling that. Decided to eventually create his own label, and which my wife helped come up with the name and said, you need to name it after yourself and put the kids on the label and stuff. She had a dream one night. She said God told her to tell him to do this, you know, and so because she'd worked in marketing and PR. But so there it was, Uncle Matt's Organic. The brand was built in 1999.
Okay.
And then, you know, as my brother came to all of us, Dad and I, he said, hey, why don't we try to put together some investors and buy some groves, or maybe we could lease some of the groves around, you know, that are being acquired.
Convert them to organic.
Yeah, and
Okay.
convert them to organic, because sometimes we had developers in the Clermont area, they would buy a large tract of citrus grove and they might hold it for 10 years or more. And so all of that led us to 2002. We formed Uncle Matt's Fresh back then, and that grew the fresh fruit organic that we began to pack at Haines City CGA in 2003.
Okay. I didn't realize you packed it at Haines City.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
We packed at Haines City from 2003 to
Until they closed.
in 2017. And
Was Dennis there or was
Yeah,
Ben
no,
there?
Dennis.
was?
Uh-huh.
yeah,
Okay.
Dennis Broadway.
Yeah.
Charles Counter was the head of production, and
Oh, I know
John Souls was the head of the packing house there, and we had a really wonderful ride. It was a great period. But obviously, greening cut everybody's production
Right.
and quality back enough that we just couldn't continue to do fresh fruit profitably.
Right.
And we didn't decide to make the decision to build our own packing house. Our supply was shrinking enough, and again, the fresh fruit quality concerns.
Right.
So we just started putting all of our fruit grown here in Florida into the organic juice pool then.
Okay.
But yeah, so we had a nice run with that, and we acquired properties through lease and through business partnerships, and at one time we probably had a little over, I think, 1,200 acres of citrus that was organic, by about 2009, 2010. That was in our farm plan.
In 3 different counties, Lake County, Polk County, and Highlands County.
In Highlands County?
Yep.
Nothing in Orange County. So did, in terms of the juice and the production with HLB happening, did that impact you more so? Or did the organic farming help any way with that? Because somebody I was talking to earlier had said that, it was Ed Dickinson had said that because using the cover crops and you get, well, you tell me, because I don't know enough about it.
The simple answer is yes, being certified organic as long as we have, and of course Ben and I Ben does all the research for Uncle Matt's and I grow it.
Okay.
But we have seen that we don't have near as severe problems as the conventional grower.
In the fruit drop.
In the fruit drop and the leaf drop. We don't have that severe of a problem.
Is that because the roots are stronger, or what do you attribute that to?
Well, there's a lot of unknown, that we don't know. This is observation.
Right.
Where we have a conventional grower next to one of our organic grows, and you can see the difference, on leaf drop and fruit drop.
But we still lost yield over time as well too. The smaller fruit and the reduced internal quality, being organic and having a robust organic program was key. It ultimately was not a buffer against the disease keeping you from being profitable. We certainly were pleased the first couple of years, 2012 and 13, when the industry initially saw a lot of fruit drop. We saw very little in ours, and other growers would ask, "What are you doing?" And do you have a cure for it? It's like, no, we're going backwards as well too. But for us, we felt like having a lot more soil, microbial life, and biodiversity,
Right.
and using less synthetic herbicide chemistry. That helped some in mitigating and lessening the fruit drop.
Okay.
But our unfortunate part was we had inherited a lot of groves that had been grown conventionally for decades
So it's already in
that
the
we had
soil.
just converted. Yeah, so things were already in the soil, as well as excess copper and excess phosphorus that a lot of citrus groves deal with due to the decades and decades of prior management practices. And so, that was your limiting factor, as well as you had varieties like Hamlin Orange on Carrizo rootstock, which we now know are varieties that really aren't tolerant to greening much, if at all.
Okay.
And so, Murcots, we had a good little amount of Murcots, grapefruit, and so no cultural practice to date that we've seen was going to overcome genetics that are susceptible long term, So I think that's something that gives us some optimism going forward. I mean, we see some varieties, some navels, and then some of the sugar bells, some of the rootstocks like 812 that we've used in our organic program that we have now that are, showing a pretty good tolerance to it, that when combined with a good nutritional program and cover cropping and approved micronutrients for organic use, you can manage it and do a good job at it. But the old existing tree inventory, and then that first got hit in 2006 when greening began to really spread and become endemic. there just wasn't only so much that could be done to spare those trees.
Okay. So in terms of going back to Uncle Matt's, you guys sold that for a bit and then got it back. So
No.
so tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so in 2017, Uncle Matt's Organic was sold entirely to Dean Foods, the large dairy company,
Okay.
publicly traded, and we stayed on. The family members here, you know, we all stayed on in our same employee roles. And then, unfortunately, in 2019, towards the end, Dean Foods declared Chapter 11.
Jeez.
So in 2020, in the early part, they put up a lot of their assets for sale. The dairy assets were mostly purchased by Dairy Farmers Co-op of America out of Wisconsin. And the other smaller brands that they had, like Uncle Matt's Organic and others, were sold literally, you know, in auction, if you will. And so my brother put together an investment team, of which we were a small part of, and went back through the bankruptcy process and reacquired it.
Well, I'm glad you saved it.
Yeah, we saved it, and that was in the spring of 2020.
Oh, wow, that's recent then.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, and so it's been back in private hands since then. And Uncle Matt's has been doing real well through the pandemic, you know, just like we all realized that organic orange juice had a lot of just generic brand equity out in the marketplace for cold and flu season and cold and flu tolerance, and everybody selling orange juice saw an increase in sales in 2020 and 2021.
Right.
We did well because of that, and then we also did well because we put out some new functional beverages, our Ultimate Immune, that had the mix of zinc and elderberry, you know, and gives it almost like a purple color on the shelf. And that was introduced just about 24 months ago, and that's been a big win for us.
Do the kids like that because of
They
the
do.
color?
Yes.
But it's still nutritious for them. It's not like
Absolutely.
a juice drink.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You just added elderberry and zinc and that, and enhanced like vitamin C. So it still has all the nutritional benefits, and that's something we see the future of orange juice is that it actually, you know, it has a lot of benefits in that it assists the uptake of other nutrients.
Right.
And so using orange juice, not just as a standalone to do that, obviously, because there's a lot of nutrients within orange juice, but as a functional beverage with others and combining. You know, my brother's put probiotics with it and turmeric and other lines that have also done well for us. And so it's been fun being part of that creative process. And our whole history in it was to try to be a price maker, not a price taker. As my granddad told us from the beginning, you don't want to essentially be just a sharecropper for the processing plants.
Right.
No offense. And as he encouraged us to get into the organic, it at least gave us a chance, even if we failed, to draw upon some of the old knowledge, to make our own brand, and then to have at least some pricing power as we went out in the marketing arena and in the pricing area, and, you know, stake out our own claim. And so it's been a good run. So 23 years. Uncle Matt's Organic is the oldest and best-selling organic orange juice in the USA right now. So,
Oh, wow. Well, congratulations.
yeah, 23 years.
So what did you think when they first came to you with that whole project? Did you say, are you guys crazy or what?
Well, no, it was really, you know, we were really interested in it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the whole idea of being organic,
Right.
and you know, there was just a very small segment of the industry back then that was
Absolutely.
even knew what organic meant. You know, there was a lot of hoops you had to jump through and rules you had to follow and all that. But it was very interesting to the whole family, and the opportunity to do something like this that would put you in a different class.
Right.
Yeah, and my dad, been a citrus grower all his life, you know, he was very, very encouraging to Matt. No, Matt, I love this idea. And Ben touched on it. But the joke was all of the brothers got together for the meeting, and my dad was there, and Matt made the presentation to the family, and he just kind of turned to my dad and he said, "Papa, do you think we can grow organic up here in Lake County?" And my dad looked at him and said, "Matt, what the hell do you think we did for the last 150 years? Nobody told us it was organic." And that's always been kind of the family joke, you know.
That is
Well, why don't you tell Brenda too how your thoughts on gambling and your quotes you like to say about that, and how you told us all you saw an opportunity. Why don't you share that?
Well, you're going to have to give me a little more clue on it.
So my dad always says that farming is legalized gambling.
Oh, yeah.
So when Matt brought the opportunity to us, Dad's always been somebody that said, well, you know, he's not that afraid of risk. It's all legalized gambling anyway, so let's see if we can do it. Let's take a risk.
That's great.
We like a challenge.
And then how long did it take you to actually know that it was successful? I mean, was it a year, 2 years, 5 years?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think within 5 years we knew that it had become successful, because we got up to where we were packing over 150,000 cartons a year of fresh fruit.
Wow.
Yeah, at our peak. And by 2008, 5 years into it, we were really happy with the results we were seeing. Again, that was prior to greening really getting up in. And we just continue to grow the output and the farm plan. We were seeing also really good pack outs. You know, we were fortunate to be located inside Haines City CGA, who was an excellent fresh fruit grower. You know, Charles Counter does a great job to this day. And, you know, we were pleased to be able to, alongside them, see our fruit run organic, you know, in the separate areas and theirs. And we were able to get, you know, conventional type of pack outs with our organic program. 60%. Often was our year average, and so, you know, we felt like, gosh, this can be done. And then we had the side areas where we could go to some of the processing plants like Lambeth and others and run all of our eliminations for juice. And so I think that was where we really saw, about 5-6 years in, a good fresh fruit pack out, a home for the eliminations, that we became a lot more confident that it could be done, particularly if you had an older grove that you could transition over. You know, we always had challenges with weed control and things like that. But then greening became the great equalizer, you know, for everybody. And some have done better than others, but over time, I think, you know, sadly, 2009, at the end of the season, I think the industry harvested 166 million boxes, if I remember.
Close,
This latest crop, I think, is around 42 million. So I mean, that tells you a lot. I know some of that's gone out just through real estate development and all, but still, I mean, that tells you a lot about
absolutely
the effects of the greening on the aggregate.
Well, where are you packing it now since Haines City closed?
We don't pack any fresh fruit anymore.
No more fresh fruit. Okay.
No.
Everything goes
juice now?
Yep,
Okay.
everything goes to juice.
So where is the juice plant that you're taking it through?
We take it to Lambeth over there.
It is Lambeth. Over Vero?
Yep.
Are
They're the
they
last.
Fort Pierce or Vero?
They're certified organic.
Yep, they're approved for organic. Yep, they're in Fort Pierce.
Fort Pierce. Now, do they also do Natalie's? Natalie's? They do?
I'm pretty sure they do, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure on that.
I'm not sure either. I wasn't, but I
Yeah,
mean, I know they're
Natalie's
both over
is
there.
not certified organic, but Lambeth does.
Got it.
Yeah, and if you're approved to process organic, you have your cleaning protocols and you know, alternate lines and all. So some places, like Haines City Packing House and Lambeth, they can do both.
Okay. Yeah, I was curious just because we were just because I moved to Vero Beach recently. So,
did you?
So I'm trying to get the lay of the land
Well,
there.
good for you.
Thanks.
Good for you.
So was your father, so your grandfather, so he was alive long enough to see it become successful?
Oh, yeah.
Well, he passed in 2003, so he saw us. He saw us get it rolling in fall of 2002 and start putting it all together, the initial groves, and we made a purchase on one of the groves there on Heartwood Marsh on the south side of Johns Lake in the fall of 2002. But I think the answer would be more like no. No, I don't think he did get to see us put it all together 5-6 years down the way. But he was there when we first got it rolling.
And what was his initial reaction when you? I mean, other than what have you been doing? I mean, when you guys finally actually started doing everything, did he ever say anything to you guys?
Yes.
What did he say?
He was very excited.
Yeah.
He loved the opportunity of the family working together.
Right.
You know, and trying, like I said, we had groves in 3 different counties, so obviously the Highlands County stuff, I got 3 brothers that live down there.
Okay.
That's in the citrus business. So everybody was connected all the way through, you know. So And he was big on family, so he really loved seeing the opportunity of the family working together. And of course he, you know, he had a big belief in Matt, that Matt could put this thing together and make it work. And he had actually gone with Matt on some of where Matt went to the distributors and was trying to get them to handle Uncle Matt's organic orange juice. My dad went with him to some of those things.
Oh, wow, that's so cool.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he would go to him in the meetings with Publix. So, you know, Matt could share with him the vision and the family history and what we were going to do someday. And so to this day, Publix is still our best customer for Uncle Matt's Organic.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and it was very rewarding to have my grandfather as part of that. What my grandfather did get to see is the label come out and the juice end up in Publix.
Oh, he did?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, he saw that.
He saw that, and that, you know, he always liked to say, get your thinking cap on, and as long as you were thinking and observing and asking questions, you know, my granddad was very encouraging, and so he was very happy that we had just gone out on a limb and taken a risk and tried to do something new and you know, embrace the challenge of it, if you will.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
About once a month, Brenda, we would all get together when my dad had moved down to Lake Placid. Ben, Matt, and I, and all the other brothers would all get together and meet down there at the house. And my dad was a Ben senior.
Okay.
So the phone may ring, and my mom would answer the phone, and you could hear, and she'd say, yeah, they're here. You won't be 1, you won't be 2, or you won't be 3.
And you're B3.
I'm B3. That's my nickname, B3 in the family and amongst the citrus growers.
That's fun.
Yeah, I know. It was good times. It was, for me, well, obviously personally and spiritually, it was a great blessing, more so, but it was such a great blessing agronomically. Chemistry and my granddad's knowledge of all of that, and he was such an excellent and powerful observer of nature and natural phenomenon, and he was so gifted intellectually, and he had an outstanding memory, and he had taken decades of notes.
Oh, wow.
And so he had just done a lot of in-house comparison. I mean, I think he had dual degrees in agronomy and chemistry, if I remember, but I could get that wrong.
I think that's right. Yeah.
But it was great he mentored me a lot. I learned a lot from my grandfather, and he died right before my 37th birthday, so I was just really fortunate to draw upon a lot of his wisdom. And when I went through graduate school at University of Florida, I got to live with him for 8 months while I was at Lake Alfred, and it was like he was in graduate school with me. You know, we would come home and read the papers together and debate, and he'd go back, he'd write down all these ideas and go back in the library and see if you can find something on this or whatever. And again, to have the experience for him to draw upon and him just tell you, well, you know, I had a grove that I took care of up in Umatilla, and the fertility program was such, and the soil profile was this, and the variety, but we always had a problem with fruit splitting and potash nutrition, but we haven't had that down in LaBelle. And you know, he just had so much of that to draw upon.
You're lucky to have that.
I was, and you know, the last thing too that my granddad liked and was so happy about the Uncle Matt's organic foray, if you will, was, you know, he was always fond of telling us that as growers, we don't like to blame ourselves and own our own mistakes. And he'd say, you know, we need to also ask, is it something that we're doing wrong?
Right.
Is it something we're not doing? You know, instead of just saying, oh, well, it's just a disease, and you know, it's just tristeza, push the trees out. That was the things he would say to me. He'd get so mad. He said, well, why don't we think about, are we doing something to make it worse? Is there something we could do and manage to make it better? And he went to telling me a lot about the fresh fruit that was grown in Florida back in the old days. And he remembered it, the 1930s, 40s, and 50s. And he shared with me a lot of stories about Dr. Phillips in the Dr. Phillips area around Orlando now. And the tangerines that were grown there, and the tangerines grown around Windermere and other places. And he said, you know, long ago, he said, that fruit was picked fresh off of a tree and put on a barge, some of it.
Went to Jacksonville.
And floated up to Jacksonville and then put on a train.
And went to New York.
And it made it all the way.
And made it all the way. And he said, now, if the genetic variety hasn't changed, what have we changed?
The soil.
Or something. Yeah, exactly. Why are our tangerines today in the 90s collapsing on the shelf and collapsing in the packing house, and we have these quality issues when they didn't do that 50 and 60 years ago when, as he said, we supposedly were so much simpler and dumber in our production practices. So it was really rewarding for me to just have all of that to draw upon, and then to help kind of build out a thought process where you're always challenging your underlying assumptions.
Right.
You know,
well, that was good you had him to push you like that.
Very much so. And he told me when we got in the organic, this is something I did want to share. And he said this just to me, he and I, when we were out driving through the groves, and I was talking to him, and it was around about 2001. I said, we called him Pappy. I said, well, Pappy, what do you think? I mean, we do this organic and all. I said, you know, my brother's going to do the sales part, and I'll do most of the, you know, the growing and the inputs along with Daddy. And he says, well, you know, there'll be one limiting factor there that you're going to really have to deal with. And I said, what will that be? And he said, you. Now, he said it charitably, but he said, you. And I looked at him, he goes, yeah, you're going to be the limiting factor. He says, because if you get out and farm by the old ways, you're never going to have the prettiest grove. A lot of the people at the coffee shop or at the local restaurant are going to laugh at you or tell you that it can't be done. You're going to have to be patient. He said, you know, that's going to be your challenge, is you. You're going to be the limiting factor.
No.
He had that way of challenging you in a loving way that was great, but just inspires you too.
Absolutely.
You know,
my
granddad was the best. I miss him.
Yeah, I didn't have a chance to know my granddad very well because he died when I was very young. Mm-hmm. So you're lucky to have had him as long as you did.
I know. Very blessed.
So, and you?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
No, I spent a lot of time with my dad after I was in the caretaking business, and he was in caretaking business. So, you know, once a week or so, we'd both ride, you know, and
right.
He'd take me out to a grove and say, what do you see? You know, and I'd tell him, well, I think I see it. He says, that's what you see? You know, you don't see this, you know.
Right.
So it's like Ben said, it was always a challenge when you rode with him, not in a bad way.
But just help you grow and
but
learn.
in a good
Oh,
way.
yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, he expected you to think and observe.
Yeah, that's right. He
you know,
did.
and it's like he said, look, these trees can't get up and walk.
If they don't like where they're planted, they can't get up and move and go to the top of the hill where there's better moisture or something like that.
He said, so you better figure out what you're doing or not doing.
Yeah.
Because they can't get up and walk.
Yeah. Before the 1983 freeze,
Right.
December 25th, 1983, I took a job as production manager for Libby McNeil in Libby. They
Okay.
had about 10,000 acres up there in the Clermont area.
Right.
They had their own juice plant,
Mm-hmm.
and they had their own packing house. So I had access to all of this information that is not public information, not that it's not good information. But
Right.
anyway, after I had accepted the job, the president of Libby, which their headquarters is in Chicago, he called me up and he said, I want to arrange a meeting with your dad. He said, I've never met him, but he said, I've heard all kind of stuff about your dad. Can you arrange that meeting? I'll fly down and we'll meet him at the office there in Clermont. So I set it up and he flew in and came, and anyway, we sat there and talked, and this gentleman had no knowledge of the citrus industry.
Right,
Okay?
okay.
And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean he wasn't born and raised in it like I was. Anyway, so he talked to my dad, questions back and forth and opinions and stuff like that. And then the last thing he said was, Mr. McClean, if there was only one thing that you could advise me as being president of Libby McNeil and Libby with this 10,000 acres, what would you advise me to do? And my dad looked at him and he said, that's a good question. He said, but I'll tell you, if I was in charge of this 10,000 acres, he said, I would go out and get tree insurance, not fruit insurance, but tree insurance. You know, and the Libby guy looked at him and said, I've never heard of that. And my dad said, I haven't either. He said, or no, he didn't say, I haven't either. He just said, I've never put it to work, but he said, I've thought about it many times. He said, nobody's ever thought about if we get a bad freeze and it kills that tree, it'll be 10 years before that tree gets back up producing even close to what it's producing now. Forget the fruit.
Right.
So get tree insurance. That if you get a bad freeze and it kills the tree, they'll give you X number of dollars for that tree that you can replant it. And believe it or not, they did. They went to
Who
Lloyd's.
insured them? Lloyd's did?
They went to Lloyd's of London.
Yeah, Lloyd's of London.
Oh
And they
my
got
gosh, that's a great
tree
story.
insurance policy for the whole 10,000 acres that was scattered all around Lake County. Okay, now you know the rest of the story. 1983 freeze.
Mm-hmm.
All right. The Lloyd's of London guy came about 5 months after the freeze and spent a month every day me riding him to a different block and showing him how many dead trees, dead valences, navels, grapefruit.
Yeah,
And I don't remember the exact amount now.
probably don't want to say it.
I want,
Yeah.
to, I want to know it.
But it was in the millions.
It had to have been.
Oh, yeah.
10,000 acres
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
the late 80s? Yeah.
40 years ago.
Early 80s.
Yeah.
That was early, mid 80s. Yeah. So,
Yeah. So
wow, I never heard that story before.
I know, and it's funny because me being active in the citrus business and a production manager for Libby, I never even thought about that. The thing that had just come on the market was crop insurance. You know, if your crop froze,
Right.
you do an estimate of how much fruit, blah, blah, and this is what we'll pay you for a grapefruit or a navel or a tangerine. And that was kind of the buzz. Nobody ever even thought about tree insurance.
He was definitely a forward thinker.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my
No, he'd
gosh.
been through a lot
Yeah.
of freezes.
Yes, at that point for
He
sure.
was always thinking about how to make the citrus more productive. It was
Yeah.
it was so great to be around. You know, and I'll never forget too, my grandfather, he just had a true love of just citrus and citrus production. And he had a love of the state of Florida. I mean, that was just his passion. And, you know, we've tried to have that flow through everything we're doing as well too. But, you know, he used to say to me, listen, in the final analysis, and that was his favorite saying, the final analysis.
Yeah.
In the final analysis, farming is just about taking care of other folks. And he says, if you ain't in this to take care of other folks, you shouldn't be in it. You need to get out of it. And then he said something like, whatever you grow, you ought to grow it with that in mind. And whatever you send down the way, you're pleased at what you did. That it takes care of other folks what you grew. And you ought to be proud of what you consume too. You know, and he didn't like how things were getting way too industrialized in agriculture, that we were losing the spirit of farming as he saw it. Just taking care of other folks, that's all he would do. And so he loved growing citrus so much that that's what he was doing the last day he died.
He died in the grove?
We
Just
went out,
about.
he and
He was
I
riding with Ben.
were
Yeah.
riding together to go visit Wayne Simmons and look at groves and talk about Nutri-Fight and all that. And then he had an incident with his heart and passed away later that day.
Oh my.
I, was with him and family gathered up, but that's what he did. The last day he was
We just saw Wayne. a
riding
minute ago.
citrus groves.
Oh wow.
He was out and about. That's
Well-
how he passed away, and
That's what he always said.
that's how he
to all of
wanted to
us
go.
boys, is, I hope they find me out here in the grove dead with my boots on. He said, I want to die in the grove.
And he did. Well, God,
Yep.
God gave him his wish. What
Yeah.
he wanted. That was good.
Yeah.
Yep,
That was good.
yep.
Well, I sure appreciate you guys sharing your stories. Are any
Thank
other
you.
good things we want to talk about? I mean, what was the lunch place that's up in your way? Is that Jack's? Was that Jackson?
Yeah.
Yep, Jack's Barbecue.
Okay.
It sold, and now it's a new Jack's.
Did they
Okay.
reopen it?
Yeah, it's open.
Still have all the hats up there?
It's no,
No.
they
They took all the hats?
redecorated. They did away with all the hats. They did away with all the pictures. You wouldn't even know
The
they
Gator
used to-
memorabilia.
Yeah,
What did they do?
They
with
sold it
all?
away. They sold it, gave it away. Some people came in and they had an auction, made bids on it.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
so sad.
Yeah,
yeah, and it's got a whole different atmosphere in there now. It's not, I grew up when
Yeah.
I moved there to Clermont. I was 12 years old, and my dad took me to Jack's Barbecue. The first weekend we lived in
Oh, my.
Clermont, and we ate lunch and.
it's good now. They got good barbecue,
Yeah,
good
it's
food.
good.
I think for Dad and I, the one last thing to leave us with is like my granddad said, just kind of that, what's the spirit of farming? Like my dad, what's the goal, you know? And we got away from the goal of a culture, community, and taking care of others to some degree, and it became all about making money. And there's got to be a balance of those two. And you know, I think the Jack's Barbecue kind of shows us too that over time it's just been a struggle. And some of the favorite restaurants or favorite hangouts or favorite areas, the Jack's Barbecue was the center of ag business, I think, in Lake County for 5 decades.
Yeah.
You know, and it's gone now, and the state has switched away from agricultural production in some areas more to housing and tourism. And it's, you know, it's okay. We'll adjust over time, but it's not easy along the way.
No.
You know, because of the culture you grew up in, and I don't know. We're very fortunate and very blessed for me to grow up in small town Clermont. You know.
Oh, such a beautiful area. For
yeah,
sure.
And so many people knew my dad and granddad, and so you know, everywhere I went, I was
Brenda,
treated well. So
let me share this one little story with you.
Okay.
I graduated in 1960 from Clermont High School. The Citrus Tower was a big tourist attraction because Highway 27 was the only way you could get to Miami. We didn't have any turnpike or anything, so during October, November, there was a lot of traffic, and they went to the Citrus Tower. It was a big attraction there in Clermont. So my senior class, we went up there to have our picture made on top of the tower, and there was only 30 in my class. Got to the elevator, and it was 50 cents to go up to the top. They had a little sign down there at the bottom on the handle of the elevator door. It said, "If you see a rooftop, you get your money back." Okay.
Oh.
All right, my neighbor, I live on Sugarloaf Mountain, north of Clermont. My neighbor owns the Citrus Tower.
now,
Okay. Now,
yeah.
I told him that story. It now costs $11 to go up the elevator to the
If you
top.
see a citrus tree.
Yes.
And he put a little sign down there and said, "If you see an orange tree, you get your money back."
Yeah.
Nobody's getting their money back.
No, no.
Yeah.
That's sad. It was so beautiful up then. So 27, I was born in Miami.
Yeah.
And so when we would come up to Winter Haven, which is where some of our family lived, we'd have to go through 27. And they had the sugarcane fields there. So
Right.
they were burning that sugarcane. It was almost impossible
Oh, yeah.
to
Oh.
see
Yeah,
on
you couldn't
27.
see.
It was
Yeah.
it was horrible. It was
Yeah,
horrible.
I remember that.
So, and God forbid your AC wasn't working.
Yeah.
that was the days of the roll-up windows, the roll-down windows.
Absolutely.
So-
Remember those days.
But yes. Well, thank you guys so much again
You're
for
so
doing
welcome.
this. I
Our
know I could
pleasure.
spend another couple hours just talking to you and coming up with a few other stories.
We could keep right
Anytime.
on talking.
Yeah,
So.
so we'll have to do it again.
Anytime.
We'll
We
have
will
to
do it again.
Thank you,
So,
Brenda.
thank
yeah.
you.
Thank you
Thanks
very
for the
much.
opportunity. Thanks for all you
Absolutely.
do.
Oh, you're-
Citrus Hall of Fame, Miss Florida, Citrus and all that.
Thank you. All right.